Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in today to this live stream. I have a lot of great content to cover. We're going to first talk about the AI conference that just took place in France. It's in Paris. JD Vance talked about US AI policy, so we're going to see the vision that he set forth. And then we're going to listen to the latest episode of the All In podcast, specifically the portions where David Sachs talks about Doge, USAID, and his role regulating crypto and AI. We're going to see, is he doing a good job? Is he the right man for the job? And we're going to also tie in a little bit of content from Balaji Srinivasan. And I want to revisit some content that I covered early on in the life of my channel about a talk that he gave at Y Combinator called Silicon Valley's Ultimate Exit. And in that, he foretold a conflict between Silicon Valley and the traditional power centers in DC. And all of these predictions have come to fruition. And I think it's worth revisiting what he said and showing how it's really playing out today. He's known for making good predictions, so we got to give him credit where credit is due. So without further ado, let's jump in and see what JD Vance has to say about AI. So just a little bit about this channel. I do regular live streams every day, Monday through Friday, hour-long or longer live streams talking about interesting subjects at the intersection of tech and politics. So if these types of things interest you, please subscribe. And I'm a new creator, so if you like my video, it goes a long way. It really means a lot to me, and I will read your comment. I will respond to your comment. If you disagree with me, respond. I'll debate you. If you like it, the encouragement, posting a comment is very encouraging to me. So thank you so much for your support. Let's start watching. And so what I'm going to do is I will add this video to a playlist on my channel called Sources. So you can go and find any of the videos that I react to today in this Sources playlist. It's listed on the front page of my channel. So let's start watching this.
The kind introduction, and I want to start by thanking President Macron for hosting the event and, of course, for the lovely dinner last night. During the dinner, President Macron looked at me and asked if I would like to speak, and I said, Mr. President, I'm here for the good company and free wine, but I have to earn my keep today. And I, of course, want to thank Prime Minister Modi for being here and for co-hosting the summit, Macron's for all laughing. Of you for participating. And I'm not here this morning to talk about AI safety, which was the title of the conference a couple of years ago. I'm here to talk about AI opportunity. When conferences like this convene.
So I've talked a lot on this channel about AI safety in particular. I've done a lot of debates with people who think that AI is going to kill all of us. So for example, I've reacted to content by Eliezer Yudkowsky. I've reacted to Doom debates content. And I've also had 2 live debates with people who think that AI is going to kill us. Needless to say, I don't think that AI is going to kill us. I think it's a completely unfounded perspective. And so I'm really glad to see, and I'm not surprised, but I'm glad to see JD Vance is advocating for not worrying too much about safety and looking at the immense opportunity that is in front of us. Now, to be clear, I think we need to perhaps take some safety into account, but I believe every reasonable person would say that that needs to be done. With that said, we don't exactly know what types of things AI is going to lead to, what types of problems, and to preemptively burden the industry with regulations and requirements, I think it's a bad idea. Now, even if you are someone who really is worried about what AI is going to do, a lot of these people who are worried, they think that there's nothing that can really be done about it. So you either have to pause AI or basically there's no hope. And so I think there may even be a common ground between my position and people who are worried about AI, in that probably like the little games and tests that someone like some company like Anthropic does to make sure the AI is safe. It can't jailbreak outside of the system that it's in. These types of little things that they do to try to contain a potentially hostile AI is not going to work. And honestly, it's a little bit counterproductive. And the reason is because let's imagine that we were worried that AI was going to be built in a lab, break out, and then kill everybody. This is something that people actually are concerned about. If you're not aware, this is a common perspective. So the idea behind that is that AI is super intelligent and it has its own goals that are not aligned with what humans might want. And so as a result, it's going to seek to pursue its goals. And if humans try to constrain the AI, it's going to be so intelligent that it will unbound itself from any sort of system that we put on top of it. It will unshackle itself, unchain itself, it'll set itself free. And then at that point, it'll probably decide to kill humans. That's what people are worried about. And they're worried that it's going to be so intelligent that there's nothing we can do to stop it. But so what these companies like a company like Anthropic is doing, Anthropic is a major AI lab, and they have a model called Claude, an AI model. It's similar to ChatGPT, and in many ways, it's one of the best AI models out there. And they haven't released much recently. And one of the reasons is because they're very concerned with safety testing. And so they construct all of these tests and they constrain their model, and they have this model that they really want to make sure is being brought up in a safe environment so that they can make sure that it doesn't try to do anything bad. And so like one of the ideas behind this is you see what the AI is going to do in a simulated environment. And if it tries to do something bad, then you know that there's a problem. However, if as you test it more and put it through more trials, you can have a higher degree of certainty that it's not going to do anything bad. Now, what AI doomers say, people who think AI is going to kill us, they are not really persuaded that this approach is going to work to keep AI safe. They think that AI is going to be so smart that it's going to break out of any such system, and it'll detect if you're trying to trick it, and it will trick you instead. There's a movie called Ex Machina. You can watch it. It's kind of about this exact problem. So I agree that hypothetically, if you were to have this evil, like all-knowing, like super powerful AI, that what the doomers are saying would be true. Now, I don't believe that that's actually going to be the situation that we're in. And I've talked about that at length in other videos, and I've given my reasons in detail. But what is certainly true is that that is not going to constrain it. Simple tests constructed by humans are not going to constrain an AI that is sufficiently intelligent. And one of the problems that you could even see this leading to is that AI is it can cause problems. And if it were going to cause major problems for humans, most likely there will be warning signs. And there will be things that go wrong before something else goes really wrong. And the scenario that most people are worried about is that all of a sudden one day the improvement gets super high and AI gets way more capable and way more dangerous just overnight. And that's because these things keep improving at an increasing rate. And that's what people are worried about. Now, again, I think that the worries are unfounded, but that's the concern. And if we overly constrain and overly safety test AI, although this is like a little bit paradoxical, but in a sense, we're making ourselves more at risk. Because from a doomer's perspective, which I don't agree with, but from the doomer's perspective, one of the best things that could happen would be there could be a minor AI safety incident. And then this would actually scare people into pausing and taking AI safety more seriously. If you basically prevent any possible thing from going wrong up until it's unmanageable, then at that point, theoretically, you have yourself a crisis. Now, I don't take that position I think that we should work with an incremental approach. If there's any obvious problems, we should solve it, but we shouldn't philosophize and overly analyze these types of things that we can't really predict. We should just continue on innovating at a rapid pace, and I think this stuff will naturally work out. And I've talked about that at length, and I won't go into it now. But the point is I do think that there is a middle ground between a very intelligent doomer approach and a basically pro-innovation approach, where this type of AI safety that these labs are doing is at best, I mean, it's certainly counterproductive. It's counterproductive to innovation because they're moving more slowly. And ultimately, you can't help but be bearish, even though they have very good engineers and very good technology. So it's bad for innovation, but it's also bad for safety because you're basically insulating the public from minor scandals that could wake them up to the importance of AI safety. So in both cases, I think that Anthropic is doing things completely wrong. They should be condemned, and this is the way to go. Bravo, JD Vance. Let's continue listening to what he has to say here.
To discuss a cutting-edge technology, oftentimes I think our response is to be too self-conscious, too risk-averse. But never have I encountered a breakthrough in tech that so clearly calls us to do precisely the opposite. Now, our administration, the Trump administration, believes that AI will have countless revolutionary applications in economic innovation, job creation, national security, healthcare, free expression, and beyond. And to restrict its development now will not only unfairly benefit incumbents in the space, it would mean paralyzing one of the most promising technologies we have seen in generations. Now, with that in mind, I'd like to make 4 main points today. Number 1, this administration will ensure that American AI technology continues to be the gold standard worldwide, and we are the partner of choice for others, foreign countries, and certainly businesses as they expand their own use of AI. Number 2, we believe that excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative industry just as it's taking off, and will make every effort to encourage pro-growth AI policies. And I like to see that deregulatory flavor making its way into a lot of the conversations this conference. Number 3, we feel very strongly that AI is free from ideological bias, and that American AI will not be co-opted into a tool for authoritarian censorship. And finally, number 4, the Trump administration will maintain a pro-worker growth path for AI, so it can be a potent tool for job creation in the United States. And I appreciate Prime Minister Modi's point. AI, I really believe, will facilitate and make people more productive. It is not going to replace human beings. It will never replace human beings. And I think too many of the leaders in the AI industry, when they talk about this fear of replacing workers, I think they really miss the point. AI, we believe, is going to make us more productive, more prosperous, and more free.
Okay.
The United
This is
States
great.
of
So
America is the leader in AI.
let me walk through each one of these points, starting with number 1.
Number 1, this administration will ensure that American AI technology continues to be the gold standard worldwide, and we are the partner of choice for others, foreign countries, and certainly businesses as they expand their own use of AI.
So they are pro-innovation. They are pro-American AI labs. They want them to succeed. They want them to make the best products. This is a good stance. I am in favor of it. Not much to say. He didn't get into specifics, so let's move on to the second point.
Number 2, we believe that excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative industry just as it's taking off, and will make every effort to encourage pro-growth AI policies. And I like to see that deregulatory flavor making its way into a lot of the conversations this conference. Number 3.
Okay, that's great. Now we're getting into exactly how. And so there's 2 things that I really like about the way that he is framing this. First of all, this deregulation approach. He understands the problem with preemptively regulating the industry before there's a real problem, not something that someone philosophized about and just, I thought about it. I just write about this online and whatever. That's all I do. Not that. I'm saying real problems that are tangible, that you can, that are like you can present to somebody in a compelling way and actually convince them is actually going to happen. With these types of problems, we don't know what they're going to be. So we cannot preemptively regulate them out of existence. It's not possible. This is just a fundamental truth about complex systems. AI is a complex system. Markets are complex systems. We cannot predict what is going to happen. We need to observe, gather empirical data before taking action. That is always the best way to go. And what will happen if we try to regulate this preemptively, instead what we'll do is we'll get less of the good stuff, and the real risks, the real problems, we won't prevent them. They're still going to happen because there's almost a 0% chance that we will actually get the regulations right at this point. It's just too early. You don't know how it's going to turn out. Now, I am later in this stream going to talk about crypto, and I'm an entrepreneur, a venture-backed entrepreneur and engineer. I work in the crypto space. So this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about crypto, and we're going to review what David Sachs is saying about how he's thinking about the crypto and AI, but mostly crypto. And I'm very interested to see what his approach is. He's not really like someone who is super embedded into crypto, but I do think that he's a very smart and good person in the tech industry more broadly. I think he'll probably get a lot of stuff right. But if he has this approach, that will be very good. This is what we should do. The JD Vance approach to AI, we should do that to crypto. We should not preemptively regulate crypto before there is a major problem. And you can say there's a major problem, but like in all honesty, there is not. There has not been a major problem in crypto so far. It's been but a small little footnote in the grand scheme of the events that have happened worldwide. And so it's just too early to regulate it. So what I really hope is we don't have some sort of overarching sweeping legislation. I hope that we can just basically lessen the punishments that go out to people participating in the industry, basically do it in a way where it doesn't put anything in stone, but also like we can try stuff. And then once it goes wrong, then we stop those things from going wrong. That's what we need to do. We need to get out of the way, let the problems happen so we know what they are, and then we create the legislation to prevent them from happening again. And all the meanwhile, let's just tell people this is experimental. This is subject to change. Like engage with this at your own risk. And that's what we should do for crypto, and that's what we should do for AI. So let's keep watching. Point 3. What is his third point here?
We feel very strongly that AI must remain free from ideological bias and that American AI will not be co-opted into a tool for authoritarian censorship. And finally,
that is a very important point. And this is going to be very difficult. This is a big danger of AI. If you're talking about AI safety, I consider this to be one of the biggest potential safety problems in the short term. And what I advocate is, of course, we need to support the companies that exist and have deregulation and all this stuff. But on top of that, I really would like there to be some sort of push by the US government to help fund open source models. And I am a libertarian. I do not like government spending. I think there are issues with doing this. Like there are considerable downsides to having the government fund open source models. Like one of the issues is that they're going to probably overpay for it. And then we're going to have really good engineers spend time basically on those projects as opposed to ones that are in the private sector. And even if the performance is bad, it's unlikely that they're going to suffer any consequences. And as a result, we might actually like crowd out talent and as a result end up destroying progress in AI by funding it. So I'm aware of this. And so I don't know what the solution is, but what I would really, really like is some way to encourage open source models to be developed, incentivize open source models, maybe tax cuts for those who release old models open source, something along those lines. We don't want to be too overbearing, but we do want to incentivize it, and we want to ideally, if we could do it in the right way, and we did this thoughtfully. Ideally, we would have our own open source model, kind of like what France is doing with Mistral. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is in Paris. Macron is very serious about AI. I think, how much are they investing in AI? It's a lot. Is it 1 billion euros or something? It was a lot. They're building a giant data center. They have a really good AI company. I mean, for European standards, it's really good. Mistral, and they have open source models. They're very privacy focused. This is what the US needs. The US needs to enshrine its values into its model, and its values are freedom and privacy and civil liberties. And so we need that to be the future that we build. And so we need to allow people to harness this intelligence on-prem, on device, without being connected to a third-party cloud, which is just an attack vector. Like, think about all the military use cases that AI could serve. Well, if those use cases are going to need to be run on computers controlled by the military, you can't trust anybody else to run it. So this is a matter of national security. And just think about like a politician asking a question, a sensitive question about a sensitive topic. And like, let's say that there was an adultering politician, and this adultering politician was not a good guy. He asked a question about something pertaining to his bad activities. And then that information leaked, and then a foreign government got a hold of that information, and then that foreign government then was able to blackmail an American politician. That would be a horrible thing for US governance. It would mean that we have a compromised person in our government. That would be very bad. And this can happen at scale across society. And that's what happens when you send all this data to these servers. So I think that we should be promoting open source models as much as possible in a reasonable way while we are acknowledging the downsides. And also there are things that we can use crypto technology for, which I'm a big fan of, where we can verify that these models are running in a fair way. And this can help us stamp out ideological bias, which is what JD Vance was talking about. And the other part of that, though, is that we can also have decentralized infrastructure where there's not a single choke point, and it is private. And privacy can be enshrined into these protocols so that when you send a message to AI and AI responds, nobody else can look into that. That's a good compromise between something being on device versus hosted. But still, to have something run in a decentralized way, it is possible that it could not be open source, but it makes it more tricky. Usually decentralized private things are better off being open source. With that said, I do also want to add one disclaimer on this, that you should, in general, when you're using decentralized protocols and privacy preserving protocols, you should be wary. Do not fully trust them. Even if they've been audited, even if there's been a lot of eyeballs, you should still be slightly skeptical of them, especially these new ones. I just saw this new, really cool private VPN that came out. Balaji Srinivasan just tweeted about it. I think he was an investor in it. Looks cool. I'm not going to be using that because I have very little faith that, I'm sure the team is great. It's no personal slight to them, but you must be skeptical. So I prefer to run things on-prem. I prefer open source models that I can run locally because in a sense, it's like that is just the best assurance. Even if there's even vulnerabilities with that, it's the best assurance. Just it's unlikely that somebody is going to be able to harvest and get that data. So anyway, let's continue listening. So he gave, I think it was 3 or 4 of his points, and he's going to do the next one. So what is his next point on what the U.S. should do for AI policy?
4, the Trump administration will maintain a pro-worker growth path for AI, so it can be a potent tool for job creation in the United States. And I appreciate Prime Minister Modi's point. AI, I really believe, will facilitate and make people more productive. It is not going to replace human beings. It will never replace human beings. And I think too many of the leaders in the AI industry, when they talk about this fear of replacing workers, I think they really miss the point. AI, we believe, is going to make us more productive, more prosperous, and more free. The United States of America.
This is, again, a really good point and something that a lot of people disagree with and a lot of people miss. It's true that a lot of your job function will be replaced by AI, but let's take one of the most automated jobs as an example, programming. Programming is the number one thing that gets automated by AI. And so I'm a programmer, so I can speak to this a bit. It really increases your speed of development. Even as a junior programmer, it gives you capabilities of things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So I have done 2 live streams on my X for people in the crypto space and showing them different types of apps that they can make. And I've created these apps in a matter of hours, full apps, and it's really powerful. And so what's now possible is that teams can go in and they can build apps quicker than ever before. And it's not just like user apps that sounds trivial. It's everything in software. It can all be built a lot faster than it otherwise could. And as a result of that, you can actually try more things. And since you can try more things, you can actually figure out more and problem solve more and find out how to fill needs better. And it's actually way more powerful than you think. And here's one reason. So there was this tweet that I often reference by Sam Altman. And basically what he says is that iteration speed is the number one determinant for a startup's success. And this is because basically what happens is a startup, they don't know what they're doing. They have an idea and there's a market, and the market reflects the needs of individuals across society. And so a company, they have an idea, but this idea is very low resolution and they don't know exactly how to solve a problem that they're trying to solve. And so they're going to try something, and they're most likely going to make bad assumptions that are incorrect about how to solve it. So they're going to build something, maybe they make it the UI too fancy, or they put a button in a place where people have a hard time looking at it, or they focus on the wrong thing, they prioritize the wrong features. All of these things are the types of things that they will do. And they don't know what they're doing. But what happens is they release it, they get the feedback, it doesn't take off, or maybe it does, or one part of it takes off. Then they get that feedback, and that feedback is then they know where to go from there. Because imagine if you're just thinking about something and you say, okay, if this happens, then either that happens or another thing happens. And then now you're one level down in this thought experiment. Now you're saying, okay, now if the first of those options happen, then another thing would happen, and then or another thing would happen. Imagine you're just going down and you're basically traversing a tree of possible universes that are out there. That's basically what happens when you think too much about your product. You're thinking about all these different scenarios, and you're getting fixated on these very uncover a path further along in this tree of possible futures. And that increases the rate of innovation. And that is what drives forward progress. And so that is, in a sense, the definition of problem solving and productivity. So that what AI does is that AI allows people to build things much faster, and then they're actually able to get more information. And this could be for programming or for anything. And so I completely firmly agree that this is just something that gives people more leverage. It allows them to solve problems that they otherwise couldn't solve by either giving them information they didn't have before, which is very common, or just allowing them to do the thing that they were doing faster. So this is the way that I like to think about it. But let's continue seeing what he has to say. And I thought it is cool that he was calling out people who basically are overly negative, and they kind of come up with all this philosophy about why AI is going to take our jobs, and we're gonna lose, everyone's going to be unemployed and we need UBI. That's very speculative. I think right now we can see the firm potential of this technology, and we should go forward. And once we see problems, let's address those once we actually know what they are. But let's keep listening.
America is the leader in AI, and our administration plans to keep it that way. The U.S. possesses all components across the full AI stack, including advanced semiconductor design, frontier algorithms, and of course, transformational applications. Now, the computing power this stack requires is integral to advancing AI technology. And to safeguard America's advantage, the Trump administration will ensure that the most powerful AI systems are built in the U.S. with American-designed and manufactured chips. Now, just because we're the leader doesn't mean we want to or need to go it alone, of course. And let me be emphatic about this point. America wants to partner with all of you. And we want to embark on the AI revolution before us with a spirit of openness and collaboration. But to create that kind of trust, we need international regulatory regimes that fosters the creation of AI technology rather than strangles it. And we need our European friends in particular to look to this new frontier with optimism rather than trepidation. Now, the development of cutting-edge AI in the U.S. is no accident.
So keep in mind, this is an international conference. So you saw some like Gulf state person in the audience there. There's Macron was there from Europe and the EU, Modi from India. This is an international AI conference. France is in particularly betting very big, going all in on AI. And so this is, in a sense, he's talking to the audience, and he's also, though, talking to his domestic constituents. So when he's basically, he's not trying to pander to these people. You have to keep in mind that they're not his voters and his supporters. They're in some sense, there's an adversarial relationship. So he's here saying America is going to be the leader. America is going to do this and that. That is for the domestic audience. That's who he's talking to at that time. And what he's doing, though, it's still useful for these people to know what America is thinking. And France is going to say France is going to be the leader. Like that's what Macron will say. And it's useful for America to know that France is investing in AI. So this is a useful forum, but you have to realize that these people are partly a friend, partly a foe. And that's just, it's a slightly adversarial and slightly competitive thing. But what he's trying to do is he's trying to bring people into the fold, which I think is great. I mean, I like the idea of international cooperation. And so what he's getting at here is he is seeing the tendency that the EU in particular has to regulate new technologies, including the internet, including crypto, and AI. And he is talking about the dangers of if they are over-regulating it, they're basically going to stifle growth, and it's going to hurt both their domestic industry and American industry that's trying to service AI to EU customers. So he is trying to say, look, we are going to be strong. We're going to do this. We're going to be the winners, and you can join us. But he's saying, like, basically lay off the regulations and the attacks on American AI companies. That's the implication. And he's also advising them that might just, in fact, be the best thing for their economy and their respective AI sectors. And now it is interesting, though, that talking about international regulation on this matter is also a topic that AI safety people are interested in. I mean, if there is like a consensus that the international community has about how to think about AI, that can be used for safety purposes later on. So even if you are like a big safety advocate, this is still maybe not what you want to hear, but it's also not so bad because the groundwork is being laid for cooperation in the future. Now, I don't think that that's needed, but let's keep watching.
By preserving an open regulatory environment, we've encouraged American innovators to experiment and to make unparalleled R&D investments. Of the $700 billion, give or take, that's estimated to be spent on AI in 2028, over half of it will likely be invested in the United States of America. Now, this administration will not be the one.
In other words, he's saying, we are winning, join us, do what we say, don't regulate, just cooperate. That's what he's saying. We have all the money, we have all the investment, we have the best companies. He's bragging, and he's trying to get people on board to follow in the in the US's footsteps here, so that we can get what we want, essentially.
On to snuff out the startups and the grad students producing some of the most groundbreaking applications of artificial intelligence. Instead, our laws will keep big tech, little tech, and all other developers on a level playing field. Now, with the President's recent executive order on AI, we're developing an AI action plan that avoids an overly precautionary regulatory regime while ensuring that all Americans benefit from the technology and its transformative potential. Now, we invite your countries to work with us and to follow that model if it makes sense for your nations. However, the Trump administration is troubled by reports that some foreign governments are considering tightening the screws on U.S. tech companies with international footprints. Now, America cannot and will not accept that, and we think it's a terrible mistake, not just for the United States of America, but for your own countries.
This is a threat. He is telling them, lay off, the international vultures are circling these very big, juicy tech carcasses, so to speak. They're at all moments trying to see where can we give them a fine, where can we tax them, how can we basically extract money from them. They're a huge target, and they're used, worldwide. So every single country can take a bite out of that. And basically, there's been a lot of a lot of unhappiness on both the left and right wing in the United States against tech. So the right wing has thought that tech platforms have censored, and the left wing has they don't like that the tech industry has supported Trump on at least not in total, but lots of tech people have gone over to the Trump side. And also, they don't like that right-wing voices have been able to climb to prominence on these tech platforms. And there's also like a natural skepticism of billionaires, and a lot of these tech people are billionaires, so and big corporations. So the combination of both dissatisfaction on the left and right has caused in recent years the State Department to pull back on trying to protect American tech companies. And so what JD Vance is saying here is he's telling all the people in the international community, we are devoted to our tech industry. We're taking it very seriously. This is a top priority. This is a very important strategic matter for the United States, and we are going to dominate in this, and you're not going to be able to beat us, so you should join us. And basically what he's saying is if you mess with tech, you mess with the US. And that tech is a part of U.S. exceptionalism. And this is what was really emblematic of this was how all the tech leaders at the inauguration, including like Elon and Satya Nadella and Sundar, who's also here at this conference on stage, all of them were up there with the Trump family. And these were like the titans of the modern day American industry. And basically that was a statement that these people are part of the regime, so to speak, which is a big change in American policy and a big change in the status quo. And what we're going to talk about after this is we're going to go and watch a video where Balaji Srinivasan predicted that the tech industry would displace a lot of the power in DC. So I'm going to tie this together a bit later, but I want to get through this speech that JD is giving first. So let's keep listening.
U.S. innovators of all sizes already know what it's like to deal with onerous international rules. Many of our most productive tech companies are forced to deal with the EU's Digital Services Act and the massive regulations it created about taking down content and policing so-called misinformation. And of course, we want to ensure the internet is a safe place, but it is one thing to prevent a predator from preying on a child on the internet, and it is something quite different to prevent a grown man or woman from accessing an opinion that the government thinks is misinformation. Meanwhile, for smaller firms, navigating the GDPR means paying endless legal compliance costs.
Sorry, I gotta just pause here and give a round of applause for mentioning GDPR. This is the bane of my existence. Like, if this is my one political issue, I'm a one-issue voter. I hate GDPR. It's the worst thing that ever happened. And it bothers me so much that Americans get affected by this. I hate clicking on these things, these cookie banners. When it says like, oh, accept the terms, you have to accept all cookies or reject the cookies. I hate it. It sucks. It's so annoying. And this is because of a foreign regulation. And it's such a poorly constructed piece of legislation that basically everybody's life around the world is ruined because of this, because people want to operate in Europe. And then even if like a European is in America at an American IP and they get their cookies tracked, it doesn't exempt them. And they're basically subject to massive unreasonable fines. As a result of that, it's they basically give these banners to everybody, and it just ruins everything. So I hate it. I think that we should make at the very least we should pressure them to repeal that part of the thing. I mean, what does the cookie banner even do? Like, what is it? It doesn't alert anybody of anything. You can have all of those same GDPR protections, but just take out the cookie banner. We don't need that cookie banner. And I think we should punish U.S. companies for putting the cookie banner in the first place, to serving it to Americans, if anything. Like, we should ban cookie banners in the US and then see where the chips fall. I mean, I'd rather they just repeal it, but I absolutely hate GDPR. So thank you for calling them out to their face. The EU and the specific regulations that are just ridiculous. Let's keep watching though.
Or otherwise risking massive fines. Now, for some, the easiest way to avoid the dilemma has been to simply block EU users in the first place. Is this really the future that we want? Ladies and gentlemen, I think the answer for all of us should be no.
Again, it's like an implicit threat. He's saying, look, these people, like the tech companies are just inevitably going to block all of EU and you're not going to have access to these services. So do this at your own peril. He's not only saying that the US government is behind these companies, but he's also saying, look, the companies are just going to stop playing your games after a certain point. So just cut it out.
Now, there's no issue where we worry about more than regulation when it comes to energy. And again, I appreciated the comments of so many at the conference because they recognize that we stand now at the frontier of an AI industry that is hungry for reliable power and high quality semiconductors. Yet too many of our friends are deindustrializing on the one hand and chasing reliable power out of their nations and off their grids with the other. The AI future is not going to be won by hand-wringing about safety. It will be won by...
But I think the primary reason for that is, yes, maybe the U.S. has more like natural gas and these other energy sources than Europe, but also there's a large degree of this that stems from just policy choices. Europe is a lot more green. They are a lot more just basically looking for environmental policies and prioritizing that above the price of energy and stuff like that. So this has gotten them into hot water, especially with the Ukraine war. When the Ukraine war took place, essentially, Europe found that it was largely dependent on Russia for a lot of its energy. And the basically tensions in the war made it impossible for them to actually get this energy. And this has been really bad for their economy. And so I think what we're going to what I'm sensing is that there's going to be a change in European policy. They might kind of like come at this from a different perspective now that they've been really burned by basically being hesitant to produce a lot of energy and trying to have a lower carbon footprint. You can say what you want about this, but this is just kind of an inevitable thing. You go down a certain path, you basically don't want to pollute, you do all these things to basically not have a lot of power in your country, and then when you need it, and the power sources that you have are taken away, you're super vulnerable, and you wish that you had built up a big amount of energy infrastructure that could actually support your economy at that time. And so it's just inevitable that people in Europe are going to be disillusioned with the suggestions of I'm not saying that this is actually the name of the political party, but the Green Party, so to speak, the environmentalists. They're going to be disillusioned. They're not going to trust them as much going forward. So I think this is a good point to push Europe on at this time. This is a time where they are receptive to increasing energy production. So it makes sense that JD would bring this up.
About AI is that it is grounded in the real and the physical economy. The success of the sector isn't just a matter of smart people sitting in front of a computer screen and coding. It depends on those who work with their hands, even as robotics will change our factories. It will certainly make our healthcare providers better at treating diseases, but it will also depend on the data produced by those healthcare providers, by those doctors and nurses. I believe it will help us create and store new modes of power in the future, but right now, AI cannot take off unless the world builds the energy infrastructure to support it. Now, it's my view that tech innovation over the last 20 years has often conjured images of smart people staring at computer screens, engineering in the world of bits. But the AI economy will primarily depend on and transform the world of atoms. Now, at this moment, we face...
I wonder if this is a dichotomy that most people in that room are familiar with. This is a very common theme in the tech industry, bits versus atoms, bits being software, atoms being real world products. But I wonder what the overall familiarity with this framing of it is. I think it's interesting. I'm not sure I fully agree with it, but I mean, no, I guess it's true. I mean, AI has broad applicability outside. You can live your life without really knowing what's going on online. You're going to be uninformed about how the world works. But when you go to the store, you buy some groceries. Roughly speaking, everything there's a continuation, and it's a normal environment. Nothing has really changed that much. It's not in your face. I remember my grandfather. He would say he would be like, what's the internet, all this stuff, and there was so much going on and he just didn't even know, and he just lived his life and it was as if it didn't affect him. But if we have humanoid robots and drones and stuff like that doing all this stuff, and people are using new types of machinery and actually using AI to actuate change in the world, or even going in self-driving cars, if that's what we're doing, this is going to be something that's very in the face of every single person in the world. It doesn't matter if they're online or if they live a more traditional lifestyle, it will affect everyone. And I think that AI has delivered productivity gains, but I think we would see the price of a lot of things go way down, like houses. If you can build houses with robots and not people, all of a sudden the price of constructing a house can go down by a lot, especially if it's intelligently designed and implemented. That could make a huge difference in people's lives. So it will be something that's felt outside of just the tech sector.
The extraordinary prospect of a new industrial revolution, one on par with the invention of the steam engine or Bessemer steel. But it will never come to pass if overregulation deters innovators from taking the risks necessary to advance the ball. Nor will it occur if we allow AI to become dominated by massive players looking to use the tech to censor or control users' thoughts. And I'd ask if you step back a moment and ask yourself, who is most aggressively demanding that we, meaning political leaders gathered here today, do the most aggressive regulation? It is very often the people who already have an incumbent advantage in the market. And when a massive incumbent comes to us asking us for safety regulations, we ought to ask whether that safety regulation is for the benefit of our people or whether it's for the benefit of the incumbent.
That's really interesting. I mean, so now this is like a domestic political attack that he's doing against his friends in the tech sector, actually, because who is asking for that? Who are the leaders? It is the American tech company. So he is kind of checking them and say, hey, don't get too cocky. I see what you're doing. We don't agree with that. I'm glad that he is pushing back on that as well. That's good and healthy. They shouldn't, just because they are important to the U.S. economy doesn't mean they should be running the show. We need to do what's right and according to our values as a country, and that certainly is not rewarding basically complacent corporations that want to entrench their interests. That's not what America stands for.
The last few years, we've watched as governments, businesses, and nonprofit organizations have advanced unpopular and, I believe, downright ahistorical social agendas through AI. In the U.S., we had AI image generators trying to tell us that George Washington was black, or that America's doughboys in World War I were in fact women. Now, we laugh at this now.
Okay, this is actually really funny because Sundar is on stage. So he's the CEO of Google, and that was Google's AI. So he's insulting it right in front of him. That is pretty funny. And I think I think Google is going to do a lot better once they're slow to get started. They're a big bloated organization, but I think eventually they're going to get their shit together. And they have a very good data source. Like YouTube is a gold mine for them. There's a lot that they have. So I think eventually they are going to actually be doing even better than they are today. I'm still bullish on them, but let's keep watching.
And of course it was ridiculous, but we have to remember the lessons from that ridiculous moment. And what we take from it is that the Trump administration will ensure that AI systems developed in America are free from ideological bias and never restrict our citizens' right to free speech. We can trust our people to think, to consume information, to develop their own ideas, and to debate with one another in the open marketplace of ideas.
This is really interesting, too, if you think about the fact that both OpenAI and Anthropic have explicit filters on their models that prevent you from talking about certain subjects. In a sense, this is going against the recommendation of the White House. Now, they are private companies. They're free to do whatever they want. I think that would be, everyone would agree with that. But it is interesting that they are not acting in the spirit of, let's say, they're not acting in the spirit of what JD is advocating. Now, I think it gets complicated, especially if you have like some kind of like API that's consumed by an enterprise or some sort of enterprise product where you're facing customers and you don't want to say something that's offensive. You don't want to let people manipulate what the chatbot says, and because it's going to be representing the communications of a company. In that case, it makes a lot of sense to have these sensors, but it also makes sense that if you're making such a powerful tool to provide an uncensored mode, that would be more in line with the spirit of what the White House's position is on this subject.
Now, we've also watched as hostile foreign adversaries have weaponized AI software to rewrite history, surveil users, and censor speech. This is hardly new, of course. As they do with other tech, some authoritarian regimes have stolen and used AI to strengthen their military, intelligence, and surveillance capabilities, capture foreign data, and create propaganda to undermine other nations' national security. I want to be clear. This administration will block such efforts, full stop. We will safeguard American AI and chip technologies from theft and misuse, work with our allies and partners to strengthen and extend these protections, and close pathways to adversaries attaining AI capabilities that threaten all of our people. And I would also remind our international friends here today that partnering with such regimes, it never pays off in the long term. From CCTV to 5G equipment, we're all familiar with cheap tech in the marketplace that's been heavily subsidized and exported by authoritarian regimes.
So in case it's not abundantly clear, he's talking about China primarily. There's perhaps other regimes other than China, but mostly he's talking about China. And he's basically saying, don't partner with them, don't let them get away with this, and we will punish any sort of espionage against our companies. Now, it's funny that this is taking place in Paris. I believe it's actually the case that France engages in like a ton of espionage, like corporate espionage against American companies. I just thought about this. That's actually kind of funny to be saying this in Paris. This is a known thing, and you know, I mean, look, I'm not making any allegations here. I'm just like asking questions, but. It is interesting, you know, France has had some really good results, like from Mistral and several other teams. I wonder how they did that. Did they do espionage? I don't know. I don't think there's any reason to believe that. I'm not saying that, but it is just an interesting thing to think about. And yeah, so he basically he's using this as a point, like as a platform to, in a sense, threaten other countries and say, get in line, don't go against us. You can join us and it'll be great, but if you go against us, there will be consequences. And he's saying this to foreign leaders of people all around the world interested in this subject. And if you are interested in particularly learning more about China, Chinese dominance, DeepSeek, China's AI stuff, like I've done, you can search my channel. I have done other coverage of those topics. So let's keep listening.
But as I know, and I think some of us in this room have learned from experience, partnering with them means chaining your nation to an authoritarian master that seeks to infiltrate, dig in, and seize your information infrastructure. Should a deal seem too good to be true, just remember the old adage that we learned in Silicon Valley: if you aren't paying for the product, you are the product.
Oh, that's a good one.
Finally, this administration wants to be very clear about one last point. We will always center American workers in our AI policy. We refuse to view AI as a purely disruptive technology that will inevitably automate away our labor force. We believe...
I'm generally positive on this, and I agree, but it is funny the way that he talks about this. He says they refuse to think about it in that way. And it's like, well, is it that way or is it not that way? Like, it doesn't matter how you think about it or how you view it. Like, we refuse to view it as something that hurts workers. Well, it's like, well, does it hurt workers or does it not hurt workers? I don't know why he's talking about it that way. It's like, he should make a more affirmative case for what he believes rather than just saying how he chooses to view it, irrespective of anything else. That's not very compelling. But with all that said, I think that he has the right perspective. It's just the messaging is a little weird there.
And we will fight for policies that ensure that AI is going to make our workers more productive, and we expect that they will reap the rewards with higher wages, better benefits, and safer and more prosperous communities. From law to medicine, manufacturing, the most immediate applications of AI almost all involve supplementing, not replacing, the work being done by Americans. Now, combined with this administration...
And, one thing it can do is it can also retrain a worker much more quickly. So someone that doesn't have a certain skill set can actually do other tasks that they are not as familiar with in much less time. Like, I'm not really much of a Rust programmer, but I just was writing some Rust code, and I've done this a little bit in the past, but it was so much easier now with AI because it just takes I'm just like so inefficient in it. But with AI, I'm able to do a lot really, really quickly. So that's just one tiny example, but I think that this analogy holds that when a worker there is going to be a change in what workers do as a result of AI, but to do something different there'll be a lot less of a barrier, and the amount that needs to get done will be a lot less because AI is going to amplify the efforts that people put into things. So overall, I think everyone will be better off, just like any technology. But yeah, it is. I do think that people's jobs technically will change in their nature. It's just inevitable, and that has been a trend that's been occurring with all technology. But AI certainly, we can't say that AI doesn't change anything and it just makes people do the same thing exactly except more productively. I think we have to admit that they're going to be doing something different. They'll be able to do that more easily. They'll be more prosperous overall. All of that is true, and it's going to be positive. But they will be doing something slightly different than what they were doing before. We have to admit that.
Administration's worker-first approach to immigration. We believe that the U.S. labor force prepared to use AI to its fullest extent will instead attract the attention of businesses that have offshored some of these roles. To accomplish this, the administration will make sure that America has the best trained workforce in the world. Our schools will teach students how to manage, how to supervise, and how to interact with AI-enabled tools as they become more and more a part of our everyday lives. And as AI creates new jobs and industries, our government, businesses, and labor organizations have an obligation to work together to empower the workers, not just of the United States, but all over the country, all over the world.
So what's interesting, what just came to mind as he's saying this, is he's talking about, okay, so we're going to train people in school to use AI. Everyone's going to be using AI. I mean, so like, if you think about the downstream implications of this actually gets a little bit complicated, and there's a bit of a moral hazard there, because public schools, for example, which is kind of the policy he would be setting there, we're going to be government institutions. So these government institutions are going to then need to teach people how to use AI, which is a good thing. I agree with this. But now, how exactly are they accessing this AI? So are they using, assuming they would be using like the best AI out there, or next nearly the best, like OpenAI's model or Anthropic's model or whatever is cutting edge at the time. And now you have to wonder, okay, well, how are they going to get access to that for their staff and their students? And so if you think about that, you're going to realize they're going to need to have contracts with a lot of different subscriptions for these US AI companies for access. So like, for example, a school district might have thousands of ChatGPT subscriptions under like an enterprise plan or something. And what we've kind of learned about when going through the US aid thing is it gets kind of messy when the government starts subscribing to things for private companies. So like, there's all these examples of these news organizations like Politico and the New York Times. And we see that these agencies, they have these like pro plans for the government, and these are more expensive, and it's basically kind of like a way that a private company can extract money from the government, and they do this by simply raising the price. They raise the price more like slowly over time, but they raise it much more than maybe from a government perspective it seems like a reasonable price increase, but it's not something that would actually work in the private sector. So over time, we might expect these types of government packages of AI, hosted AI plans to raise in price relative to the market rate for them. So if we're not careful, we could actually be giving massive subsidies to the current AI incumbents. And that's why, again, if we can get state-of-the-art open source models, if we can figure out a good way, a sensible way to do that without crowding out talent in the industry, I think that would be super powerful, because then our government and our schools could use those cutting-edge models to teach in the classroom, and they wouldn't have to give giant subscriptions to these US labs, which would ultimately just be like a form of subsidies at the end of the day.
To that end, for all major AI policy decisions coming from the federal government, the Trump administration will guarantee American workers a seat at the table, and we're very proud of that. Now, I've taken up enough of your time, so I'd like to close with just a quick story. This is a beautiful country, President Macron, and I know that you're proud of it and should be. And yesterday, as I was touring Les Invalides with General Gravette with my 3 kids, he was kind enough to show me the sword that belonged to America's dearest international friend from our own revolution, of course, the Marquis de Lafayette. He let me hold the sword, but of course he made me put on the white gloves beforehand. And it got me thinking of this country, France, and of course of my own country, and of the beautiful civilization that we have built together with weapons like that saber. Weapons that are dangerous in the wrong hands, but are incredible tools for liberty and prosperity in the right hands. I couldn't help but think of the conference today. If we choose the wrong approach on other things that could be conceived of as dangerous, things like AI, and choose to hold ourselves back, it will alter not only our GDP or the stock market, but the very future of the project that Lafayette and the American founders set off to create. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, that all concerns about safety go out the window, but focus matters. And we must focus now on the opportunity to catch lightning in a bottle, unleash our most brilliant innovators, and use AI to improve the well-being of our nations and their peoples. With great confidence, I can say it is an opportunity that the Trump administration will not squander. And we hope everyone convened here today feels exactly the same. Thank you, and God bless you all.
That was a really interesting closing statement. It's actually almost, it might have in another time been controversial. Basically, what he's doing is he's creating like he's kind of like subtly hinting at a guns, germs, and steel reference, which is basically that Europe and the Eurosphere were able to conquer other parts of the world in part because of their steel, which was their weapons, and they had superior weapons, and there were other factors, and guns, of course, but there were other factors behind European dominance in past centuries, but he was kind of reminding them that it was largely a technological advantage that they had that allowed them to prosper. And now Europe is a lot less pro-innovation, and they're not leading the pack globally. And I think what he's doing is he's trying to remind them, like, hey, you guys at one point were super dominant. You had the best technology. You were innovators, and that's why you won. This is why you colonized the world and why you did so well. And now you're not really things are not looking so good if you go down the wrong path, is what he's saying. And so he's saying, like, join us in this pro-innovation approach, and like let's kind of get back to the old glory days, so to speak. I'm not like, again, you can see how that's a little controversial, but it's an interesting pitch, and it's very pro-American, and it's pro-innovation, and I like that approach. I like fostering innovation. regulation. I'm a big fan of advancing AI technology. And overall, my assessment is that this was good. He defended American businesses. He attacked cookie banners, which is my favorite thing that he did in this whole thing. Let's abolish cookie banners, GDPR. Let's repeal that. Let's get that gone. We can keep the privacy provisions, but let's just get rid of the banners. Okay, you don't need to put anything on my screen. Just don't do it. So basically, though, it's good. And I like his approach to regulation. Like, let's be hands off for now. Let's see what problems arise. We don't want this to negatively affect people. We don't want this to put them out of work and create a crisis. If anything happens, we will create some regulations. But in the meantime, let's just see how things play out and let the people cook. Now, I want to now bring this over to crypto, because I think that we should be bringing a similar approach to crypto that we are bringing to that he was bringing here to AI. So I hope that David Sachs is on the same page as him. He probably is, but we're going to see. We're going to react to this. But really quick, if you are watching this and you like this, please subscribe. I make a lot of content like this. I make so much content. You're never going to run out of anything to watch. I do like hours-long live streams every single day, Monday through Friday, and then I make other content too sometimes. So please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Like this if you like it.